The night my wife left me, she didn't slam a door, raise her voice, or shed a single tear. She simply placed her wedding ring on the metal hospital tray beside my bed and said, "Ethan, I didn't sign up for this." The fluorescent lights above me buzzed like tired insects. The room smelled of antiseptic, plastic tubing, and the weak coffee someone had forgotten on the windowsill. My right leg was locked in a brace from hip to ankle. My ribs hurt every time I breathed too deep. There was a line taped to the back of my hand, a pulse monitor clipped to my finger, and a folded discharge packet on the chair that explained how to live carefully for the next 12 weeks. Carefully. That word almost made me laugh. 36 hours earlier, I had been driving back from a late inspection on the east side of town, windshield wipers dragging rain across the glass, when a pickup hydroplaned through a red light and turned my life into twisted metal and flashing blue lights. I remembered the sound more than the pain. The crunch, the hiss of steam, the quiet afterward, when even the rain seemed to hold its breath. The doctor said I was lucky. Broken femur, cracked ribs, concussion, months of physical therapy, but alive. People love saying that in hospitals, like alive is supposed to cover everything else. Madison stood at the foot of my bed in a cream wool coat, her blonde hair smooth, her makeup perfect, her eyes dry. She looked less like a wife visiting her injured husband and more like a woman inspecting damage to a car she had already decided not to repair. I searched her face for fear, sadness, anything familiar. I found calculation. "You're going to need help with everything," she said. Not softly, not cruelly, exactly, just flat, like she was reading a number from a bill. The stairs, showers, driving, work. God, Ethan, your work. I looked down at the brace, at the swollen shape under the blanket where my leg used to feel like mine. "It's temporary," I said. My voice came out rough, but steady. That mattered to me for some reason. "The surgeon said I'll walk again." Madison's mouth tightened. "With a cane." "Maybe. For a while." The way she said cane made it sound like a stain. Outside the window, the parking lot glistened under cold rain, rows of cars reflecting red from the emergency entrance sign. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed quietly. Life kept moving with insulting ease. Madison took one step closer, then stopped before touching the bed rail. "I can't do this," she said. For words. Small words. Clean words. But they landed heavier than the crash. I didn't ask what she meant. A man knows when a sentence is not the beginning of a conversation, but the end of one. She opened her purse, pulled off her wedding ring, and set it on the tray. It spun once against the stainless steel, a tiny bright circle wobbling under the hospital light, then settled beside a paper cup of melting ice. I stared at it for a long second. 15 years together, reduced to a soft metallic tap. "Madison," I said, and her name felt strange in my mouth, like a word from another language. She looked away first. That told me more than any confession could have. "Brandon is waiting downstairs," she said. There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just placed between us like another medical instrument. Brandon Pierce, the polished leasing manager from Hawthorne Mall. The man who wore tailored suits and smiled like he owned every room he entered. I had seen him around Madison twice before, maybe 3 times. His hand lingering too long near her back. Her laugh turning lighter when he spoke. I had noticed. Husbands notice. We just lie to ourselves longer than we should because truth is expensive and marriage teaches you to keep paying. My chest tightened, but I kept my face still. "You brought him here?" I asked. "He drove me," she said. I wasn't in a condition to drive after everything. After everything. I almost admired the phrasing. Somehow my accident had become her burden. My broken leg had embarrassed her. My hospital bed had inconvenienced her future. She adjusted the strap of her purse and glanced at the door as if afraid someone important might see her standing too close to me. "I hope you recover, Ethan. I really do. But I need a life that doesn't feel like waiting for things to fall apart." I wanted to tell her that I had spent years building that life while she shopped inside buildings she never knew I owned pieces of. I wanted to tell her that the mall Brandon strutted through like a king was already tied up in final paperwork under my holding company. I wanted to tell her she was walking out on the wrong version of me. But pain has a strange way of sharpening a man. It teaches you when silence is worth more than explanation. So I said nothing. I watched her pick up her overnight bag from the chair, careful not to wrinkle her coat. At the door, she paused, maybe expecting me to beg, maybe hoping I would make this easier by looking pathetic. I didn't. I just lay there with my leg in steel and my heart going colder by the second. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said. Then she left. The door clicked shut softly. No movie ending. No thunder. No dramatic music. Just the monitor beside me counting each heartbeat I still owned. I turned my head toward the tray. Her ring sat there under the white hospital light, small and useless, like a promise after the person who made it stops believing in promises. 5 minutes later, my phone vibrated against the blanket. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen, Nathan Brooks. My attorney. I answered with one hand, my throat dry. Nathan didn't waste words. He never did. "Ethan," he said, voice low and calm. "The final transfer cleared at 11:42 p.m. Hawthorne Mall is officially yours." I looked at the closed door Madison had just walked through, then at the rain sliding down the window like the whole city was being washed clean. For the first time since the accident, I felt something besides pain. Not joy, not revenge. Something quieter, something harder. I closed my eyes and breathed through the ache in my ribs. "Good," I said. "Don't announce my name yet." The sound of Madison's heels faded down the hospital corridor, each step smaller than the last, until all that remained was the soft hum of the machines beside my bed and Nathan Brooks breathing quietly on the other end of the phone. I kept staring at the closed door, not because I expected her to come back, but because some foolish part of me was measuring how long it took 15 years to disappear. Nathan said my name once, careful and steady. I told him I was still there. He gave me the numbers like a doctor reading test results. Caldwell Urban Holdings had completed the acquisition. The last minority lender had signed off. The title company had recorded the transfer with the county just before midnight. Hawthorne Mall, all 1.7 million square feet of glass, tile, escalators, loading docks, parking decks, food courts, and empty storefronts, now belonged to me. Not to Brandon Pierce. Not to the investment group Madison had bragged about at dinner parties. Me, the man lying in a hospital bed with one leg trapped in a brace and a wedding ring abandoned beside a cup of melting ice. I asked Nathan to repeat the time. 11:42 p.m. I almost smiled. Madison had walked out at 11:37. 5 minutes. That was the distance between the man she left and the man she would have pretended to love. It is strange what a broken heart notices. The drip of water in the bathroom sink. The blue glow of a monitor. The way rain draws crooked lines down a fifth-floor window. I should have felt powerful. I did not. Ownership does not numb betrayal. Money does not make a hospital bed warmer. A signature cannot make someone stay after they have already decided your weakness disgusts them. But it can teach you something. It can show you exactly who loved you and who only loved the weather when the sky was clear. Nathan asked if I wanted the press announcement moved up. He had a communications team ready, a business journal interview pending, and 3 local reporters sniffing around the deal because Hawthorne Mall had been dying for almost a decade. I looked at Madison's ring again. Under the fluorescent light, it looked less like jewelry and more like evidence. "No announcement," I said. "Not yet." Nathan went quiet for a second. He had known me for 12 years, long enough to hear the difference between caution and intent. "Ethan," he said, "you are in a hospital. Your wife just left you. This may not be the best night to make strategic decisions." "It is the first honest night I have had in years," I said. That ended the argument. Downstairs, I imagined Madison stepping through the automatic doors into the rain, lifting one hand over her hair, Brandon rushing around with his umbrella like a man auditioning for a life he had not earned. I imagined his Mercedes pulled up beneath the covered entrance, its headlights shining across wet pavement, his leather shoes avoiding puddles. Brandon was handsome in the way expensive stores are handsome from the outside, all polish and no foundation. He managed leasing at Hawthorne Mall, which meant he believed proximity to power was the same thing as power. Madison had always liked that kind of shine. She liked valet tickets, rooftop cocktails, charity photos, the little velvet ropes that made ordinary people feel selected. I used to think she wanted a better life. Later I learned she wanted a better audience. The elevator dinged somewhere beyond my door. A nurse passed by, pushing a cart that rattled softly. My ribs ached when I shifted, a slow white pressure under the bandages. I pressed the phone closer to my ear and asked Nathan about Brandon. Paper rustled on his side. Then his voice changed, the way it did when a file stopped being background and became useful. Brandon Pierce had 3 vendor contracts under review, 2 tenant complaints, and a marketing account that did not reconcile cleanly. Nothing proven yet. Not enough to accuse. Enough to watch. I closed my eyes. The room tilted gently behind my eyelids, pain medication and exhaustion pulling at the edges of thought. But the center of me stayed awake. Clear. Cold. Nathan asked what I wanted done. I told him to freeze all discretionary mall spending until the ownership transition was complete. Start an internal audit. Review every lease extension Brandon had touched in the past 24 months. Do it quietly. No headlines. No warning. And Madison? Nathan asked. Her name moved through the line like smoke under a door. I looked at the empty chair where her coat had been, at the shallow dent in the cushion already rising back into shape. That was how fast a room could forget someone. Nothing, I said. Let her believe whatever Brandon told her. Nathan exhaled. That may hurt her later. I turned my face toward the window. Rain blurred the parking lot into silver and black. Somewhere below, a car door closed. Maybe hers. Maybe not. No, I said. What hurts later is the truth catching up. After we hung up, I lay there without moving. The phone rested on my chest, warm from the call. My leg throbbed in time with my heartbeat. I should have called someone. My sister. My assistant. A friend. Instead, I watched the ring until the ice in the cup melted completely, and I understood something that no doctor, lawyer, or marriage counselor could have explained to me. Madison had not left because I was broken. She left because the accident made it impossible for me to keep decorating her illusion. For one night, I was not the quiet provider in the background. I was not the dependable husband holding the camera while she smiled. I was a man who needed help, and need is a mirror. Some people see love in it. Some people see inconvenience. Madison saw inconvenience. So I did the only thing I could do. I reached for the tray, picked up her ring, and dropped it into the drawer beside the bed. The tiny click it made sounded final. Then I turned off the lamp, let the room fall blue and quiet, and promised myself that when I stood again, I would never stand where she left me. I spent the next 6 weeks learning how loud silence could be. Hospitals are noisy places during the day, full of rolling carts, clipped footsteps, insurance questions, and nurses with kind eyes who have already seen every kind of heartbreak. But at night, when the hallway lights dim and the world shrinks to the glow of a monitor, silence becomes a second patient in the room. It sits beside you. It watches you count the ceiling tiles. It whispers every sentence you wish you had answered differently. Madison did not call the first night, or the second. On the third, she sent a text that said she hoped I was healing. No apology. No question. Just 7 clean words with no blood in them. I stared at the screen until it went dark, then placed the phone face down on the blanket. That was the beginning of my education. Physical therapy started on a Monday morning with a woman named Denise who was 5 feet, 4 inches tall, and had the patience of a saint until you lied to her. She put a walker in front of me, locked the wheels on my hospital bed, and said, "Mr. Caldwell, today we find out how badly you want your life back." I wanted to tell her I owned a dying mall, 3 redevelopment parcels, and enough debt to make most men sweat through their shirts. I wanted to tell her I had built companies from folding tables and bad coffee. Instead, I gripped the handles and tried to stand. Pain moved through me like electricity. My leg trembled. My ribs pulled tight. For 2 seconds, I hated every inch between the bed and the floor. Then my foot touched down. Not strong, not graceful, but down. Denise nodded like that was all the speech a man needed. "Again," she said. So I did it again. That became my life. Stand. Breathe. Sit. Sign documents. Ice the leg. Review leases. Sleep badly. Wake before dawn. Repeat. Nathan sent files in thick envelopes and encrypted emails. I learned them all from a hospital bed first, then from my recliner at home with a brace on my leg and a legal pad balanced on my lap. Hawthorne Mall had been beautiful once. Everyone in the county remembered it that way. Christmas decorations hanging from the skylights. Teenagers crowded around the food court. Families walking past fountains that caught pennies and wishes. But time is unkind to places that stop earning attention. The anchor store on the West End had closed. The movie theater smelled like old carpet. Half the escalators needed service. The fountain had been drained and covered with plywood painted to look intentional. People called it dead. I called it mismanaged. There is a difference. My father taught me that when I was 12 years old, standing beside him in a rented garage in Ohio while he rebuilt broken appliances for grocery money. He used to say, "Most things are not ruined, Ethan. They are neglected." Back then, we lived in a 2-bedroom duplex where the winter came through the window frames and my mother kept towels along the sills. We did not have much, but we had discipline. Dad fixed what other people threw away. Mom worked the front desk at a dental office and stretched every dollar until it begged for mercy. I learned numbers at the kitchen table, watching her divide bills into piles. Rent, electric, gas, food. Nothing left for pretending. That kind of childhood does something to a man. It makes flash look suspicious. It makes promises sound expensive. It teaches you that real security does not announce itself. It sits quietly in signed contracts, clean books, land records, and keys that open doors nobody knows you own. Madison never understood that. When we first met, she said she admired how grounded I was. Later, grounded became boring. Responsible became small. Private became embarrassing. She wanted the world to see success. I wanted success that survived when the world stopped clapping. That was the crack between us, thin at first, almost invisible, like a line in glass before the whole pane gives way. While I recovered, Brandon Pierce kept moving through Hawthorne Mall like a man posing for a photograph nobody had asked to take. Reports came in from the audit team. Dinner meetings charged to tenant relations. Consulting fees with vague descriptions. Promotional budgets approved, spent, and barely documented. Nothing loud enough for a headline yet, but enough to smell smoke. I told Nathan to keep digging. Quietly. Always quietly. At home, the house felt too large without Madison's noise. Her closet was half empty. Her favorite white chair was gone from the bedroom corner. She had taken the espresso machine, but left our wedding photo on the hallway table, turned face down, as if even she could not look at it. I did not turn it back over. Some things do not need witnesses twice. Every morning, I worked my leg until sweat ran down my neck and my hands shook on the parallel bars. Every afternoon, I worked the mall until the numbers stopped lying. By the end of the 6th week, I could cross my living room with a cane. Slowly, carefully, but under my own power. The first time I made it from the couch to the front door without help, I stood there breathing hard, palm flat against the frame. Outside, the neighborhood was bright and ordinary. A sprinkler clicked across a lawn. A delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere, a dog barked. At nothing important. I looked down at the cane in my hand and thought of Madison saying the word like it was something shameful. Then I smiled, not because it did not hurt, but because it did. Pain meant I was still moving. And moving meant the story was not finished. The first time I went back to Hawthorne Mall, I parked on the upper level of the east garage, where the concrete still held dark stains from years of oil leaks and winter salt. It was a Thursday morning, 10 weeks after the accident, and the sky over Ohio looked flat and gray, the kind of sky that makes every building seem older than it is. I sat behind the wheel for almost 3 minutes with both hands resting on top of my cane, watching shoppers move below me like pieces on a board nobody had bothered to reset. A mother guided 2 children toward the entrance. An older man carried a pharmacy bag against his chest. A security guard leaned near the glass doors, scrolling through his phone. Life was still coming here, but barely. That was the thing about dying places. They did not collapse all at once. They dimmed one light at a time. I stepped out slowly. My leg resisted the cold air, tight and stubborn under my dress pants. The cane tapped once against the concrete, then again. Each sound bounced off the garage walls with a hollow patience. I had asked Nathan not to notify management. No welcome. No escort. No polished tour with fake smiles and hidden panic. I wanted to see the mall the way customers saw it. The automatic doors opened with a tired groan, and the smell hit me first. Pretzels, floor cleaner, old carpet, and something damp hiding behind the walls. The kind of smell people notice but never mention. The skylights above the main corridor were streaked with grime. 3 planter boxes held plastic greenery with dust on the leaves. The fountain at center court was covered with plywood and wrapped in a vinyl banner promising exciting changes coming soon. Soon was the favorite word of people who had no plan. I moved past a closed shoe store with brown paper taped over the windows. Then a boutique with a handwritten sign that said temporary hours, though the dust on the door handle told. Another story. Every empty storefront felt familiar. Not because I had failed here, but because I knew neglect when I saw it. I had seen it in old duplexes, strip malls, warehouses, and once, in my own marriage. Madison had treated love the same way this management team treated the property. Ignore the leak. Paint over the crack. Smile when visitors arrive. Blame the building when the roof finally gives up. Near the food court, I saw a poster for a charity gala scheduled 3 weeks out. Gold lettering. Black background. Sponsored by Hawthorne Mall Business Alliance. At the bottom, in smaller print, was Brandon Pierce's name. Event chair. Of course, Brandon understood optics. He understood lighting, logos, handshakes, and making himself stand beside important people. What he did not understand was foundations. A man can rent a spotlight for one night and still own nothing when the lights go out. I was reading the vendor list when I heard his voice behind me. Smooth. Bright. Too confident. Sir, are you looking for the management office? I turned slowly. Brandon stood 10 feet away in a navy suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a paper coffee cup with a boutique logo on it. His eyes flicked to my cane first, then my shoes, then my face. That was the order people use when they are deciding how much respect you cost. He did not recognize me right away. I had only met him twice before, both times across crowded rooms where Madison made sure I was introduced as Ethan, my husband, with the same tone people use for old furniture that came with the house. No, I said, just walking. His smile widened by half an inch, professional and empty. Well, we are actually in the middle of a transition around here. Some areas are not as accessible as we would like, but security can help you if you need assistance. Assistance. There it was again. The polite version of pity. My hand tightened around the cane, not from anger, but from memory. Madison at the hospital door. Madison saying she could not do this. Madison looking at my leg like it had personally insulted her. I kept my voice even. I will manage. Brandon nodded, already bored. Then his phone lit up. I saw Madison's name on the screen before he turned it away. The air between us changed, though he had no idea why. He stepped aside, answered in a softer voice, and walked toward a corridor marked employees only. Hey, beautiful, he said, low enough that most people would miss it. I did not miss it. Husbands hear certain words even after they stop being husbands. I stood near the dead fountain and watched his reflection stretch across the polished tile. He laughed at something she said, easy and pleased with himself, while behind him 3 storefronts sat dark and 2 janitors pushed a cart with 1 bad wheel. That was Brandon in one picture. Charm in front. Decay behind. I did not follow him. I did not need to. The audit already was. Instead, I walked the rest of the mall slowly, letting the cane strike the floor in a steady rhythm. Tap. Pause. Tap. Pause. Every step hurt, but pain had become useful by then. It kept me honest. It reminded me not to rush a thing just because my pride wanted noise. By the time I reached the north entrance, my leg was burning and my shirt collar felt tight, but my mind was calm. I had seen enough. Hawthorne did not need a miracle. It needed discipline, clean books, honest tenants, working lights, leadership that cared more about rent rolls than reception photos. In the parking lot, I lowered myself into the driver's seat and called Nathan. He answered on the second ring. How bad is it? He asked. I looked through the windshield at the mall's faded sign, the letters standing against the gray sky like a name waiting to be restored. Worse than the reports, I said. And Brandon? Nathan asked. I watched a black Mercedes pull into the reserved management space near the entrance. Brandon stepped out first. Madison came around from the passenger side wearing sunglasses too large for the weather and a coat I had paid for 2 Christmases ago. She slipped her arm through his as they walked toward the doors of a building neither of them knew belonged to me. For a second, something old moved in my chest. Then it passed. Do not touch him yet, I said. Let him keep smiling. The next 2 weeks taught me that rebuilding a place is not much different from rebuilding a man. Everybody wants the dramatic moment, the ribbon cutting, the applause, the photograph under clean lights. Nobody wants to watch the slow work, the forms, the phone calls, the inspections, the permits, the awkward meetings where people stop smiling because the numbers finally tell the truth. I worked from a temporary office above the old department store on the north end, a room with faded carpet, a cracked window seal, and a view of the parking lot where weeds pushed through the asphalt like the property itself was trying to confess. I could have moved into the executive suite. I chose not to. The executive suite had Brandon's fingerprints all over it. Frosted glass. Cheap art. A leather couch that looked expensive until you sat on it. A bar cart nobody needed in a mall management office. My room had a folding table, a laptop, a stack of contractor bids, and a chair firm enough to keep me awake. It suited me better. My legs still hurt in the mornings. The kind of deep, stubborn ache that does not ask permission before entering the day. I would sit in the car before sunrise, breathing through it while the first delivery trucks backed into the loading docks. Then I would take the cane, count 3 breaths, and walk inside. Tap, pause, tap, pause. By then, the sound had stopped embarrassing me. It had become a metronome, proof that I was still moving forward, one measured step at a time. The first order I gave was simple. Turn on every light. Not the decorative lights for customers, not the pretty fixtures near center court. Every hallway, every service corridor, every storage room, every office. Neglect loves darkness. So do bad habits. By noon, electricians were replacing bulbs above loading bays that had been dim for years. By 3, maintenance found water damage behind the food court wall. By 5, accounting sent me a spreadsheet that made my jaw tighten. Brandon had been very generous with money that was not his. Event consultants with no deliverables. Marketing invoices rounded to clean numbers. Tenant improvement credits approved for businesses connected to his friends. Nothing flashy enough to make a newspaper gasp. Just small leaks everywhere, draining the place one polite signature at a time. Nathan sat across from me that evening, reading through the audit notes with his glasses low on his nose. "We can suspend him now," he said. Rain ticked against the window behind him. I looked down at a photo in the file. Brandon at last year's holiday gala, Madison beside him in a red dress, both of them smiling under a banner paid for by Hawthorne Mall's promotional budget. My promotional budget. The strange thing was, I did not feel jealousy then. Jealousy needs uncertainty. I had none left. What I felt was cleaner. Recognition. Some people do not steal because they are desperate. They steal because nobody has ever made them believe the door was locked. "Not yet," I said. Nathan removed his glasses. "You keep saying that." "Because he still thinks the room belongs to him." Nathan studied me for a moment. "And Madison?" I closed the folder. Her name did not cut the way it used to. It still touched something bruised, but bruises change color when they heal. "She is part of the room he thinks he owns," I said. The charity gala was 10 days away. Brandon had built it as his stage, a public celebration of the mall's supposed comeback, complete with donors, city council members, local reporters, and every polished person in town who liked to be photographed near good news. Madison had already posted about it online. A fresh start for Hawthorne. Proud of the people making it happen. She did not name Brandon in the caption, but she did not have to. The picture said enough. Her hand on his arm. His grin tilted toward the camera. The mall's glass entrance glowing behind them. I looked at that photo once, then sent it to Nathan. "Make sure the ownership announcement happens that night," I said. He was quiet for a beat. "That is very public." "So was her leaving," I said. "Not to the town, not to the cameras, but to me." In that white hospital room, it had felt like the whole world had watched her set down that ring. There are humiliations no one sees that still deserve an audience when the truth arrives. I did not want revenge in the way people imagine it. I did not want shouting. I did not want Madison dragged through gossip or Brandon ruined by rumor. Rumor is lazy. I wanted documents. Timelines. Clean signatures. Facts that stood upright without needing my anger to hold them. So we prepared. Accounting finished the audit. Legal drafted termination options. Contractors cleaned center court. The dead fountain was uncovered, repaired, and filled again. For the first time in years, water moved beneath the skylights, catching afternoon sun in bright pieces. Tenants noticed. Customers noticed. Even the security guards stood a little straighter. Places know when someone finally cares. So do people. 3 days before the gala, I was crossing the main corridor when I saw Madison alone outside the boutique near the east wing. She did not see me at first. She was studying a dress in the window, head tilted, sunglasses resting on top of her hair. For a second, she looked like the woman I married, not the woman who left. Then Brandon appeared behind her, handed her a shopping bag, and kissed her cheek like a man collecting applause. She laughed. Light. Easy. The sound reached me across the tile and landed softer than I expected. Maybe because I no longer wanted it back. She turned then and saw me. Her smile faltered, just enough. Her eyes dropped to the cane, then lifted to my face. I gave her a small nod. Nothing more. Brandon followed her gaze and smirked like he had found a stray dog near a restaurant door. I kept walking. Tap. Pause. Tap. Pause. Madison did not call after me. Good. Some doors should stay closed until the person on the other side hears the lock. By the morning of the gala, Hawthorne Mall no longer looked like a place waiting to be forgiven. It looked awake. Crews had worked through 3 straight nights, polishing tile until the skylights reflected in it, replacing dead plants with live ones, repainting chipped railings, repairing the fountain, and hanging warm lights across center court in long golden strands. The old silence of the building had changed. It was still early when I arrived, but I could hear the difference before I reached the doors. Floor machines humming, ladders shifting, coffee brewing in the temporary catering station. A violinist practicing somewhere near the fountain, one soft note at a time. A place has a pulse when people believe in it again. I stood just inside the north entrance with my cane in one hand and the final event schedule in the other, watching workers move across the atrium like careful clockwork. My leg was stiff from the cold, and my ribs still reminded me when I turned too quickly, but the pain had settled into the background by then. It was no longer the loudest thing in the room. Brandon was. He swept through center court in a charcoal suit, barking polite orders with a smile pinned to his face. He touched flower arrangements he had not paid for, corrected banners he had not designed, and shook hands with vendors whose invoices were already flagged in my audit file. To anyone watching, he looked like the man in charge. That was the performance. The funny thing about performance is that it only works when nobody checks the script. At 10:30, I met Nathan in the service hallway behind the old fountain control room. He handed me a slim black folder. No drama, just paper. Brandon's discretionary authority had been revoked at 9:15 that morning. His building access would expire at 8:45 that night, 15 minutes after the public announcement. The employment separation documents were ready. The legal notices to the vendors tied to the irregular invoices were ready. The corrected ownership filings were ready. Every page had been reviewed twice. Facts do not need to shout when they are properly arranged. Nathan watched my face as I read. "You can still make this private," he said. I looked through the narrow service window toward center court. Brandon was laughing with a city councilman, one hand on the man's shoulder, the other gesturing toward the repaired fountain like he had personally brought water back to the desert. A few feet away, Madison entered through the east doors in a pale blue dress and a white coat, her blonde hair falling neatly over one shoulder. For a second, the crowd seemed to bend toward her. She had always known how to arrive. Brandon saw her and brightened, not with love, but with ownership. That was the only word for it. Ownership. He crossed the floor and kissed her cheek while cameras from a local lifestyle blog flashed nearby. Madison smiled the exact smile she used to wear beside me at charity dinners, polished, practiced, empty at the edges. I felt the old ache in my chest, but it did not take the wheel. It just sat there, a passenger from another life. "No," I told Nathan. "Public is fine." The day moved slowly after that, almost too slowly. Final inspections, sound checks, security briefings, tenant greetings. I walked the second level alone around noon, passing stores that had opened their gates early because the building finally felt worth opening for. A toy shop owner waved at me without knowing who I was. A coffee kiosk manager told me the new lighting made the whole wing feel safer. An elderly couple sat near the fountain sharing a cinnamon roll, watching the water move as if it had been gone from their lives personally. Those small things mattered more to me than the gala. The money was important. The contracts were important. But places like Hawthorne carry memories for ordinary people. First jobs, first dates, school shopping, bad pretzels after good movies. A community does not always know what it is losing until the lights go out. My job was to turn them back on. At 6 o'clock, guests began arriving in steady waves. Men in dark suits, women in winter coats and bright dresses, reporters with cameras, restaurant owners, city officials, former tenants curious enough to return. Music filled center court, soft but confident. The fountain caught the gold lights and threw them across the ceiling in trembling reflections. I stayed upstairs near the balcony rail, partly because I wanted the full view, partly because stairs still required humility. Below me, Brandon lifted a champagne glass and played host. Madison stood beside him, glowing under the lights, laughing at something a reporter said. Then her eyes drifted upward and found me. The laugh died before it reached her mouth. I did not wave. I did not smile. I just looked back calmly. She leaned toward Brandon and whispered something. He glanced up, saw me, and smirked. That smirk told me he still thought I was a guest in his room. Maybe a wounded ex-husband wandering too close to his new life. Maybe a man Madison had outgrown. He raised his glass slightly, a small private toast meant to sting. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. At 7:55, Nathan appeared at my side. 5 minutes, he said. I nodded and adjusted my jacket. The cane rested against the rail, black and plain under my hand. Down below, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the small stage beside the fountain and tapped the microphone. The crowd softened into silence. Brandon straightened his shoulders. Madison touched his sleeve. Cameras lifted. For one last breath, they both believed the night belonged to them. Then the master of ceremonies smiled at the audience and opened the folder Nathan had placed in his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying cleanly through center court. Tonight is not only a celebration of Hawthorne Mall's renewal. It is also our honor to introduce the man whose vision, investment, and leadership made this restoration possible. I picked up my cane. Madison's face changed before my name was even spoken. Some truths arrive early in the body. The blood knows before the years do. The master of ceremonies continued. Please welcome the owner and chairman of Caldwell Urban Holdings, Mr. Ethan Caldwell. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything Brandon suddenly understood. I stood at the balcony rail for half a second longer than I needed to, not because I was afraid to walk down, but because some moments deserved to breathe. Below me, the entire center court had gone still. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Reporters froze with cameras lifted. The violinist lowered her bow without realizing it. The fountain kept moving, soft water catching gold light, indifferent to human embarrassment. That was the strange mercy of truth. It does not rush. It does not shout. It simply arrives, and every lie in the room has to make space for it. I took the first step toward the stairs. My cane struck the tile once. Tap. The sound carried farther than it should have. Then another. Pause. Another. Every eye followed me as I descended from the second level, one careful step at a time. Months earlier, Madison had looked at that cane like it was the end of my worth. Now it was the only sound in a room full of people waiting to understand how badly they had misread the man holding it. Brandon's face had lost its color. Not all at once. It drained slowly, like a screen dimming after the power is cut. He looked from me to the master of ceremonies, then to Nathan, then back to Madison, as if one of them might hand him a different reality. Madison did not move. Her hand still rested lightly on Brandon's sleeve, but her fingers had gone stiff. I reached the stage without hurrying. The master of ceremonies stepped aside and gave me the microphone. It felt cool in my palm. I looked out over the crowd, over the tenants who had taken a chance on this place, the employees who had kept showing up, the city officials who had expected a simple speech, and finally, just for 1 second, at Madison. Her eyes were wide now. Not sad. Not yet. Shock comes before sorrow when people discover they betrayed the wrong version of you. I began quietly. For years, people have called this mall dead. My voice came through the speakers steady, lower than I expected. I never believed that. I believed it was neglected. A few people nodded. Store owners, mostly. They knew. Neglect is easy to excuse because it happens slowly. A light goes out. A lease gets mishandled. A hallway gets darker. Good tenants leave. Bad habits stay. And one day, people call the place broken, as if it chose to become that way. I paused. My leg was aching from the stairs, a deep burn running along the brace beneath my suit, but I stayed upright. I do not believe broken things are useless. I believe they reveal who is willing to do the work. The words landed harder than I planned. Madison looked down. Brandon swallowed. Good. Let them hear it however they needed to. I spoke about the renovation, the new tenant fund, the safety upgrades, the return of local businesses, the jobs we were creating, and the commitment to keep Hawthorne open as more than a shopping center. A community place. A living place. I did not mention Madison. I did not mention the hospital. I did not mention Brandon's audit. That was not mercy. That was discipline. Some facts are too sharp for a microphone. They belong in folders, not speeches. When I finished, applause rose slowly, then filled the court. It was not thunderous at first. It was careful, like people were still catching up. Then the tenants started clapping louder. The coffee kiosk manager, the toy shop owner, the security staff near the south entrance. One by one, the room remembered what hope sounded like. I handed the microphone back and stepped away before the applause could turn me into something I was not. Nathan met me at the side of the stage. He did not smile much, but the corner of his mouth moved. "Well done," he said. Before I could answer, Brandon appeared in front of us. His smile was gone, replaced with something thin and damp around the edges. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, forcing the name out like it had splinters in it. "There must have been some communication breakdown. I had no idea you were connected to the ownership group." I looked at him for a long second. Behind him, Madison stood frozen near the fountain, watching us as if the floor had shifted under her heels. "I know," I said. 2 words. "Enough." Brandon adjusted his cuff, buying time he no longer owned. "I would love to sit down tomorrow and walk you through everything I have been doing here. I think you will find my role has been essential." Nathan opened the black folder. "Paper does not need volume. It just needs accuracy." "Mr. Pierce," he said, "your role has been reviewed. Your discretionary authority was revoked this morning. Your employment with Hawthorne Mall Management is terminated effective 8:45 p.m. Building access will expire at that time. Formal documentation will be delivered electronically and by certified mail." Brandon stared at him, then at me. "You cannot be serious." "I usually am," Nathan said. The line was so dry I almost laughed, but I did not. Brandon's eyes flicked toward Madison. There it was, the instinctive reach for the audience that made him feel important. But Madison was no help now. Her expression had changed again. Shock had cracked, and underneath it was calculation, fear, and something almost like regret trying to put on a human face. Brandon lowered his voice. "This is because of her, is it not?" I felt the room soften around us, conversations returning, cameras turning elsewhere, music beginning again near the fountain. The public moment had passed. This was private enough. I stepped closer, still calm. "No, Brandon. This is because of invoices, leases, vendor records, and decisions you made when you thought nobody above you was watching." His mouth opened, then closed. A man without clean records runs out of speeches quickly. Nathan gestured toward the service hallway. 2 security supervisors waited there, professional, quiet, not dramatic. Brandon saw them and understood. Madison took 1 step toward him, then stopped. Maybe she wanted to comfort him. Maybe she wanted distance before the cameras noticed. Maybe for the first time, she did not know which choice made her look better. Brandon walked away without another word, shoulders stiff, shoes clicking too fast across the tile. I watched him go, not with pleasure, but with relief. Rot removed is not revenge. It is maintenance. When I turned back, Madison was standing 3 feet away. Up close, the polish was still there, but it no longer held. Her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes were not. "Ethan," she whispered. My name sounded different in her mouth now. Smaller, careful, expensive. I rested both hands on the top of my cane and waited. For once, she had to decide what truth cost. Madison said my name again, but this time it did not sound like a greeting. It sounded like someone testing a floorboard before stepping into a room that might not hold her weight. Around us, the gala had started breathing again. Music softened the edges of conversation. Cameras turned toward the fountain. Waiters moved between guests with trays of sparkling water and small plates. People were smiling now, laughing, clinking glasses under warm lights, pretending they had not just witnessed a man lose his stage in public. That is what polished rooms do. They swallow discomfort quickly so the photographs still look good. Madison stood close enough for me to smell her perfume. The same expensive floral scent she used to wear on anniversaries, back when I still believed a reservation and candlelight could repair things neither of us had named. Her eyes kept moving from my face to my cane, then to the stage, then to the hallway where Brandon had disappeared. She was assembling the new map of her life and discovering too many roads had been erased. "I did not know," she said. 3 words people use when they want ignorance to sound like innocence. I let them sit there between us. The fountain murmured behind her, steady and clean, water falling over stone in a place that had been dry for years. "You did not know what?" I asked. Her lips parted, then closed. That was the trouble with truth. It asked for precision. She glanced around, lowered her voice, and stepped closer. "I did not know about the mall. About the company. About any of this? I nodded once. I know. Her face tightened, because that answer gave her nowhere to hide. Ethan, please. Can we talk somewhere private? I looked past her at the crowd. A councilman was shaking hands with Nathan. The toy shop owner was laughing with his wife. Two teenagers were taking pictures by the repaired fountain. This night belonged to them more than it belonged to Madison's panic. The service corridor, I said. 5 minutes. She followed me without a word. The difference between center court and the back hallway was only one door, but it felt like crossing from theater into truth. The music dulled. The lights turned fluorescent. The floor changed from polished tile to sealed concrete. Along one wall, stacked chairs waited beside labeled storage bins. No cameras. No warm reflections. No audience for the version of Madison that knew how to shine. I stopped near the freight elevator and turned to face her. My leg ached from standing too long, but I did not sit. Not yet. She wrapped both arms around herself, though the hallway was not cold. I was scared, she said. After the accident, I was scared, and I handled it badly. I looked at her carefully. She had always been good at choosing soft words for hard things. Handled it badly. As if she had spilled coffee, missed a flight, forgotten a birthday, not placed her ring beside my hospital bed, and walked out with another man waiting downstairs. You were scared, I said. So you left. Her eyes shone. I panicked. No, I said, calm as a closed door. You evaluated. That stopped her. I could see the sentence reach her, not loud, but accurate. Accuracy is worse than anger when someone is used to negotiating with emotion. You looked at the brace, the discharge papers, the recovery time, the possibility that I might need help, and you decided I no longer matched the life you wanted people to see. She shook her head, but not strongly enough to convince either of us. That is not fair. Fair was sitting in that hospital room and telling me the truth years ago. My voice stayed low. Fair was admitting you respected the idea of success more than the person building it. Fair was not letting me find out, 5 minutes after you left, that the only thing between your goodbye and your regret was a county filing. She looked down. The fluorescent light showed what the gala lighting had hidden. Tiredness around her eyes. Foundation gathered near one corner of her mouth. A tiny tremble in her fingers. For the first time that night, she looked less like the woman who had left me and more like a person standing in the consequences of her own choices. If I had known, she whispered, then stopped. She knew. I knew. The hallway knew. I almost felt sorry for her then, not because she deserved rescue, but because some confessions destroy themselves before they finish speaking. That is exactly why it cannot be different, I said. She looked up sharply. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and removed the envelope Nathan had prepared that morning. Plain white. Her name printed on the front. No drama. Just paper. Her eyes locked on it like it was alive. What is that? She asked, though her voice already knew. The divorce agreement, I said. Reviewed. Fair. Clean. No surprises. She did not take it at first. Her hands stayed folded against her coat, as if refusing the envelope could rewind the night. Ethan, please do not do this here. You ended the marriage in a hospital room, I said. I am only ending the paperwork. She flinched. Not because I raised my voice. I did not. Because the truth had finally stopped being polite. Slowly, she took the envelope. It looked heavy in her hand. Behind us, the freight elevator hummed to life somewhere above, cables moving behind metal doors. Madison wiped under one eye with her thumb, careful not to smear her makeup. Even in collapse, she remembered appearances. Was any of it real? She asked. The question surprised me. Maybe it surprised her too. For a moment, the hallway went very quiet. I thought about our first apartment, the dented coffee table, the cheap Christmas tree, her bare feet on cold kitchen tile while we made pancakes at midnight. I thought about hospital light on a wedding ring. Both were real. That was the cruel part. Yes, I said, but real does not always mean lasting. Her shoulders dropped. Somewhere beyond the door, applause rose again from center court, warm and distant, like weather from another world. I stepped toward the elevator and pressed the button. The small circle lit up orange. Madison clutched the envelope against her chest. Can I call you tomorrow? She asked. The doors opened with a soft mechanical sigh. I stepped inside, turned, and rested one hand on my cane. You can call Nathan. Her face broke quietly then, not in a dramatic way, not for cameras or sympathy, just a small collapse around the eyes. The kind that comes when a person finally understands the door is not stuck. It is closed. As the elevator doors began to slide shut, she said my name one last time. I held her gaze until the gap narrowed to a thin strip of light. Then the doors closed, and for the first time since the accident, I was not leaving something behind. I was moving on. The elevator carried me down to the parking level in a silence so complete I could hear the faint buzz of the lights above my head. For months, silence had felt like punishment. In the hospital room, it had pressed against my ribs harder than the brace around my leg. In my empty house, it had sat across from me at dinner, wearing Madison's absence like a face. But that night, as the doors opened onto the lower garage and cool Ohio air moved across the concrete, silence felt different. It felt earned. My driver was waiting near the black sedan, but I raised one hand and told him I wanted a minute. He nodded and stepped back. I walked slowly toward the open edge of the garage, the cane tapping beside me in that steady rhythm I had once hated. Tap, pause, tap, pause. Below, the mall glowed against the winter night. Not bright enough to look fake, just warm enough to look alive. Cars filled rows that had been half empty for years. People moved under the entrance lights, coats pulled tight, voices lifting in small bursts of laughter. Through the glass, I could see the fountain shining at center court, water moving where plywood had covered shame. I stood there for a long time, one hand on the cold rail, and thought about how close I had come to confusing abandonment with failure. That is the trap. When someone leaves you at your weakest, a part of you wants to believe they were only confirming what the pain already said. That you are less now. That the broken bone, the cane, the lonely house, the unanswered messages, all of it is proof that your value has leaked out somewhere along the road. But pain is a liar when it speaks too soon. It tells you the ending while you are still in the middle of the sentence. 3 months passed before the divorce was final. Madison signed. Brandon fought his termination for 2 weeks, then stopped when the documents grew louder than his excuses. Nathan handled both with the same quiet precision he brought to everything. No headlines, no spectacle, just certified mail, clean filings, and consequences arriving on schedule. Madison called once. I did not answer. Then she sent a letter. Not a long one. She said she had been wrong, that fear had made her selfish, that she wished she had seen the man instead of the circumstances. I read it at my kitchen table on a Sunday morning while coffee cooled beside my hand. The house was peaceful by then. Not empty. Peaceful. There is a difference. I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer where I had kept her ring after the hospital. Then I closed the drawer. Some apologies deserve to be heard. They do not all deserve a doorway back. Spring came slowly that year, but it came. The Bradford pears bloomed along the mall entrance. Contractors replaced the cracked pavement near the south lot. A local bookstore signed a 10-year lease in the old shoe store space. The movie theater reopened with new seats and a Saturday matinee program for families. We brought in a farmer's market on weekends, then a small business incubator in the West Wing where the empty anchor store used to sit like a missing tooth. People stopped calling Hawthorne dead. They started saying it had changed. I like that word. Change did not pretend the past never happened. It simply refused to live there. My leg improved too. Not perfectly. Perfect is a word for sales brochures and people who lie at dinner parties. I still felt the ache before rain. I still used the cane on long days. But I walked the mall every morning before the stores opened, past the fountain, past the coffee kiosk, past the toy shop owner who always waved and called me boss even after I asked him not to. Sometimes I would stop beneath the skylights and listen to the building wake up. Gates rattling open, espresso machines hissing, employees laughing as they counted cash drawers. The ordinary music of things being cared for. One morning, almost 6 months after the gala, I saw a little boy drop a penny into the fountain and squeeze his eyes shut to make a wish. His mother smiled and told him not to tell anyone or it would not come true. I stood a few feet away, leaning lightly on my cane, and almost laughed. Adults complicate hope. Children understand it. You throw something small into moving water, and you believe the world might answer. That afternoon, Nathan came by my office with another folder. New acquisition opportunity, he said. A struggling retail center 40 miles north. Good bones, bad management, too much debt, not enough patience. He laid the papers on my desk and waited. Through the window, sunlight touched the parking lot, turning windshields into small squares of fire. For a moment, I thought of the hospital tray, the ring, the rain, Madison walking away because she thought damage meant defeat. Then I looked down at my cane, resting beside the desk, plain black, scratched near the handle. Honest. It had carried me through the worst season of my life without ever pretending the road was easy. I picked up the folder. "Let us take a look," I said. Nathan smiled. "Not much. Just enough." That evening, I walked out through Center Court as the stores were closing. The fountain lights came on, gold beneath the water. My reflection moved beside me in the glass storefronts, slower than before the accident. Maybe, but steadier in ways I had never been. I was not the man Madison left in that hospital bed. I was not even the man who stood on the gala stage and let the room learn my name. I was someone quieter now, stronger in the places nobody photographs. And if there is one thing I learned, it is this. The people who leave when you are hurting may think they are witnessing your collapse. Sometimes they are only clearing your view. Madison thought she was walking away from a broken man. She never understood that broken ground is where foundations are tested. Mine held.